Well, good morning. It is a beautiful morning here in Franklin. We had a couple of bad days of weather and spent a couple of days getting the motor cleaned up and repainted in the garage. And honestly, I'm just out of room in there, so I've got to get it back out here on the frame. I've got new motor mounts that are going in. I've got them ready to go, and I've got the motor out here with the hoist, so I'm ready to lift it up, and then I'm going to roll the frame forward and set the motor down on those new motor mounts. Hopefully, not an easy one-man job, but possible. You really don't have any choice when you don't have any help. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to get that done. I've actually bought brake kits. I've actually started working on redoing all the brake shoes and those things, and then I'm going to get the drums turned. The drums for the front wheels, they look like they've just been replaced. They don't have any wear on the inside, so I'm just going to have those cleaned up. But I thought I'd just set up a camera and just show putting this motor back on. The only thing that I didn't do, I can kind of get you a little walk around the motor. Painted the intake and the exhaust manifold, painted the block, went through everything. One thing that I will say, if you buy a car and you just take somebody's word for it on the engine being good, it's probably a good idea, it's definitely a good idea to make sure that motor rotates freely. Now this is crazy, but it was rotating just fine, and then all of a sudden it got blocked. And I was rotating it around and it would not budge. It would get to a specific place and stop. And I knew that meant something to do with probably in the crank, or something to do with one of the rockers or something. So valve cover was off. I couldn't see. I could watch these valve, the valve rockers moving around, and then it would get to a specific place and it would stop. And the 235 and the 216 motors have these little access panels right here. And I was able to pop that off just real quick. Just want to take a quick look at it. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but that's the top of a hydraulic lifter. Now all the lifters in this car look great, but that's the top of one, and it looks like somebody broke a rod at some point, and that was laying down inside. Oh, almost fell. That was laying down inside this panel where these rods go all the way through, and it was actually blocking one of them from going further. So I found that and then took that out, and obviously it works just fine now. But had I not been cranking that motor around to feel how it feels, I would have never felt it. And then at that point, you put it back in the car, you crank it up. Once it's got ignition going, you got a whole lot of you got 140 horsepower. That's going to probably destroy some stuff once that happens. So maybe it would have been okay. I doubt it. But glad to get that out of there. But that's just something, the best you can, you ought to take them apart and really inspect them as good as you can. Since you don't have any history with the motor, you don't know, really exactly what all's going on with it. But I believe this motor's going to be good now. I mean, everything checks out pretty well. The guy that I bought it from had gone through and done some work to it. I did look when I had the intake off. You can look at some little telltale things. If you look at your exhaust manifold and you see one of these chambers in the exhaust manifold maybe black, that would indicate that cylinder's not firing. So you can look at your exhaust manifold and you can kind of get an idea of how clean firing and how clean running that motor was before. So I did some of that, just kind of did an inspection. It looks really clean inside. Even the water pump and all that area looked really clean. The radiator that came off was clean. I inspected just down inside, just the valves, just down inside that head, best that I could. That's really clean. I mean, I've done no cleanup on that, and you can see it's not gunked up or trashed or anything like that, so that's good. You can look inside. If you get one that's old, the guy that I bought it from had already replaced the spark plugs, and he actually had it running. He couldn't keep it running. That's another video, but there was so much trash in the gas tank. There was probably half a bucket it looked like somebody maybe years ago put sawdust in the gas tank, and it was 2 inches thick in the bottom of the gas tank. I don't know how he got enough gas ever to run it. So that was ridiculous. But anyway, but it would run, it just wouldn't keep running. And he had replaced the fuel pump, so the fuel pump is brand new. thinking that it wasn't getting enough gas, and he was right, it wasn't getting enough gas, but it was all because it was clogged at the other end. So so that's cool. All the fuel lines on this car are going to be brand new. Even the gas tank, I've already gone through, cleaned it all up. I'm going to repair that. But I just thought I'd give you a little update on what all is happening here today, and just show you kind of putting it. It's kind of the milestone moment when you put the motor back on the car. So we'll get that done and a little video of that, and you'll see that later. Alright, so if you don't know how that goes in, you've got a big slot on top of your frame mount, and then you've got the exact same shape, and that is going to slide down into that hole. And I may have to move the car a little bit to get that to go in there. Yeah, we got a little bit of adjustment to make, but that sits in there. Then your bottom motor mount actually comes in underneath this piece, and it's got steel on the back side, so it'll mount this way and come in underneath the underneath here. Slide up in there, and then what that does is it just creates a rubber cushion between the top and the bottom, so you're actually mounting it top and bottom. And then when you tighten that up, you've got a key nut up here that you tighten up really good, and that makes a nice smooth running motor. So that's how that goes in there. Okay, so you're gonna have a hard time getting this to fit inside that hole because there's too much rubber around that edge. So what I've done is I've taken just my grinding wheel and I'm going around this guy just ever so slightly, kind of giving it a beveled edge right there. And I'm just taking that last little edge of rubber off that and giving it just a little more room to allow it to go in there a whole lot easier. So you may want to try that trick. Also, if you'll go ahead and put your lower mount in place, so it's already in place there, and then put this one in place on top, and then go ahead and assemble your nut through it. Go ahead and assemble your nut up through it, and you can use it as to clamp itself in place. So now I've got it in place there. Now I can just put my nut here on top, and we got to tighten this up. Now you'll have to hold here and here, tighten these guys up, and that's going to squeeze that together. And I've got to do that to the other one too. But that's really the easiest way to get those mounts to go in there. You're not going to have room. These new ones are just too tight. You wrestle with it for a long time before you get. Here we are at the other side, and then what we'll do is just go ahead and pass this, pass the washer onto this one. Put the washer on the nut. Go right up to the bottom. Make sure that you've got a metal sleeve that goes in there that aligns everything. So now I've passed it up and I've got that metal sleeve in there. It's all aligned. I've got my washer on the back side here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and tighten this down. And if you tighten this down, this nut, let me show you this. When you set your motor in place, this nut will actually pass through. It'll pass through that hole. So then all you have to do once you get your motor in place is back this nut back off, put your washer on top, put the nut back on top there. And then you've held your motor mounts in place, because the issue is once you try to get your motor mounts in place, you get them in there and you knock them out of place. So it's just a pain in the butt if you don't do it that way. So make sure you put your motor mounts on, pass them up through the holes, take the nut back off, put your washer back on then, and then you've got it. You should be much easier. That's just a little tip. Well, all right, well, there it is. There's the motor back in the car, or on the frame at least. Motor mounts in. They were a bit of a booger. You just got to keep wallowing and just keep joggling back and forth until you get it right. So check this out. The valve cover, once I started sanding it down, I just thought it had a cool patina look to it. So I just clear coated it just like that. And I may keep it, and I may get a new chrome one, or I may get a new black one. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. I thought that was a pretty cool look, but the old motor cleaned up nice. Sitting in the frame. I am going to paint the, obviously the steering column there, black it as well, probably before I put the body back on. But just thought I'd show you that. So the motor's back on the frame, everything looks good. That thing's ready to crank up. I'm really excited about doing that. I also did here, I'll show you. I also kind of restored the vent tube, the crank vent. I don't really know what that does, but it's obviously important. I've seen some of the guys delete these and cap it, but I felt like, you know, the engineers at old Chevrolet probably had a reason to do that, so I'm going to leave that on there. But I got it all painted up too. Cleaned up the old starter. Actually, that's a pretty new starter he had bought. That's a new coil. I cleaned up the bracket. That was a new fuel pump. Water pump works great. I decided, you know what, it's so easy to get to, I'll just leave the one on there that's there. It's really incredible. I mean, if you do a water pump on a new car, you just about have to take the entire car apart. But these old ones, I mean, it's literally, you know, 4 bolts for the fan, pull that pulley off, and then you just pop your water pump. It's probably a 45-minute job at the most. And the water pump was circulating pretty well. I painted that oil filter. I may do something different. You know, the oil filter for the 53 was an option. In fact, they were added on by mostly by dealers, and I don't think any of the 53s actually came with a factory oil filter. So the oil filter is sort of a can. That's why you have so many different looking ones. When you see them, you'll see some that are yellow with a black top, some that are blue with an orange top, some that are orange with a black top, I believe is another option. Depends on if they're made by AC or who the filter company was, but basically they're all exactly the same thing. They mount kind of crudely on that intake manifold there. But anyway, that's an optional thing. It's something that I may leave on there and I may take off. I've got to dig up in the attic now, and I've got to find my air filter cover. I've got that up there, the factory one. I need to clean it all up. Okay, another little update. Had a good day working today. Got the motor mounts in. That was a bit of a booger, as I've told you. I did go ahead and repaint that air cover. It does not look awesome, but it looks okay. And I think for the old build, it's going to be just fine. Let's see, what else did I do? I got things hooked back up with the clutch. That's all good. Parking brakes all hooked back up. I got that down tube for the exhaust hooked up, and it is in really good shape. I can't imagine that's the original down tube, but it's actually wraps underneath that transmission and comes out kind of back here. But it's really, you know, it fits in there really tight. Nice, very solid piece. Very surprised by that. So I'm going to use that, you know, just try to reuse all the pieces that we possibly can. Good progress today. Mess to clean up, but we're heading back in the right direction. No longer tearing things apart, now we're putting things back together. It's awesome.